everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Oldish TV. My name is Karen Brown. I'm the publisher and editor of The Oldish, and today in studio we have a very special guest. I'd like to introduce you to Anna Gaffney. Here she is. Anna is an RN who has written a wonderful book, which is what we are going to be talking about on today's show. And next week we're going to be talking with the artist who created all of the beautiful images inside here. Visiting Nannie is the name of the book. So, Anna, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself so that we understand what led you to be inspired to write this?
Okay. Well, I'm a nurse, a registered nurse, and I've been there 36 years at a nursing home.
Right.
And really, it's really complicated kind of what led me to write the book. A lot of it was my grandchildren. I've got grandchildren now, 4. And then also seeing the visitors coming in to see the residents. And then what I got reflecting on as I'm getting older is that, you know how you have these tragedies through your own life?
Yes.
And I look back and I think, did I deal with them the way I should have, or could I have done it better?
That's a good point.
And I feel I could have, even though I did the best I could at the time. But, you know, you're caught up in doing your own life and just surviving.
And I think sometimes there's a great deal of pressure from our peers to do things a certain way, or, hey, I've been through this, but really, nobody's been through the same thing as somebody else. It might be similar, but it's not the same.
Exactly. Everybody's is a different story. Everybody's got all these different variables, you know. And so anyway, I got thinking about the residents, and when they come in, they just light up when their families visit. And I don't know whether families really understand how important their role is. You know, once they're in a nursing home, their role doesn't end. And the emotional support and love of their family is so important.
Right.
Then I see the little children come in, and I think there might be anxiety there because it's a totally different environment. You know, there's smells and sounds, and you know, there's
anxiety for the children.
For the children,
right? For
sure. You know, like you know, there's not just their grandma or grandpa or whoever they're visiting. There's all these other people, you know, and different things that they're seeing.
Right.
And I think that I want them to not have an anxious visit. I want them to have a really comfortable visit. So my book isn't really about the medical end of it. It's more about the visiting and their experience. So what it is that Lincoln is telling the story of his visit. And I got to, sometimes I don't feel children will ask the questions. The families, I feel, even the adults, are anxious about. When I admit someone, I see that they're anxious. Even the adults are anxious. It's not a comfortable, easy decision to put your grandma or your mother or your father or whoever into a nursing home. Right. I think children are very intuitive and they pick up on that anxiety, so they're not going to want to add to it. They're not going to ask questions as readily.
And it's like a period of adjustment to this new home, because really it's their home now.
Exactly.
But it doesn't feel that way for a while.
Exactly. It's a big transition. It's a big change. And anyway, so I feel that reading a book is a big part of how is natural when the young children.
Right.
And this way it brings up the topic in a very natural manner for both the adults and the children. And then, you know, the first time you read it, they might not ask a question, but then the second time, and maybe they've had a visit or whatever, and it doesn't have to be a nursing home, it could be at their house or a retirement home or wherever.
Right.
Oh, you know, grandma needs a lot of help or papa needs help. And then the parents, then they can add to the, yes, they do. And then the questions, the dialogue gets going, you know, and I think communication is so important. And I just think that, I don't know, I really feel that it's important for them to talk. And each time they'll say something a little different. And that was one of the hardest things. It's a small book for children.
Right.
And when you see the story short, but it was hard because I didn't want to make it frightening.
Right.
And then you had to keep it vague enough. You don't want it to be about dementia or MS, or you don't want it to be sad, but you want it to open the dialogue. And you want to be able to have the people say, this is how so-and-so, this is, you know what, Joey, this is like great aunt, whatever, but she's got oxygen, you know, and then they can add in whatever their variables are in their own life, but not overwhelm the children, and just kind of, you know, you can just judge how they're going and what they want to know.
Two things that you said have resonated with me, and one is that this book could be used for grandchildren who are visiting grandma or grandpa as they age in place, because we talked about that a great deal here, aging in place. not everybody makes the choice to go into long-term care or needs to. Sometimes enough services can be brought to them that they can stay, but that doesn't mean they don't still have challenges.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And the second thing was talking about dementia or Parkinson's or MS. It's an interesting discussion that grandma isn't MS. Grandma is still grandma.
Exactly.
She has MS, but it doesn't define who she is.
Exactly.
And Parkinson's doesn't define who grandpa is. Those are really interesting points.
And that's exactly, you picked up exactly what I'm trying to get at. You know, your role isn't to have to look after that. We'll do that. Like the nurses, we'll do
Right.
that. You know, the doctors, you know, don't worry about that part. You just love them and be there for them, you know, and support them. You know, that's what I wanted anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, at the back of the book, the real Lincoln
Yeah.
and Maeve. These people down here are, whoops, get my finger in the right direction, are the inspiration to some extent? Are those two of your grandchildren?
Yes, those are my two grandchildren.
They're sweet.
I
Look at
have
that
two
red
other
hair.
ones as well. I have two others as well.
Yes.
So I've got to do another book at some point.
Yeah, keep everything even.
Exactly.
Keep everything even. So this book is dedicated to the special little visitors in my life, Lincoln, Maeve, Julia, and Emily.
Mm-hmm.
And to my fellow healthcare workers who give so much of themselves each and every day. Anna Gaffney, registered nurse. So, as I say, we're going to talk to the artist who did these beautiful illustrations, watercolors, for our next week's show. But how did you decide that this book had to be part image, and how did you choose that image? Tell us a little bit about that whole process.
Okay.
Because
well,
it's like the back end. We get a peek inside the back end of writing a book and putting it together.
Okay. Well, basically, I wrote about what I know. So,
Right.
so I know the nursing home end of it, and those are my grandchildren. That's my daughter-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how visiting Nannie. I'm Grandma and Gigi, so I'm not Nannie to them. But my daughter-in-law, when they go to visit their great-grandma, is always saying, "We're going to visit Nannie."
Right.
And I always got a warm feeling when I heard her say that, because I just think how blessed I am to have my daughters-in-laws are wonderful,
Yes.
and they love their families, and I just think how lucky we are that they are still, like, even when they're busy, they're making that effort to go and see their great grandma and, you know, grandmas.
Right.
And so I just, that's where I got the title, because from visiting Nannie.
Right. Visiting Nannie.
Yeah. And then the grandchildren is just, I put them in because I just felt like I wanted them in the story.
Of course.
Even the dog is their dog.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, there is a dog for those of you who like dogs, for sure. Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So then, how did you go about choosing the artist and the style of image that illustrated this story? That's probably a technical discussion, but it might be one that our viewers are interested in.
Okay. Well, what happened was, so I had the, excuse me,
Sure.
I had the idea, and then I was like, well, artwork and the visual is so important because it's for children.
For children,
right?
Yes.
You know, you want to grab their attention and keep their attention. And I was like, oh my gosh, who am I going to get to do this? And Valerie, I met her through my sister-in-law. Mm-hmm. And it took me a bit of gumption to get my nerve up to ask her, you know, and I thought, well, all she can say is no if she doesn't want to do it, you know. So I said, Val, called her up, I got this idea, you know, and are you interested? And,
right.
And she'll probably tell you this next week, but then she said, well, if I like the story, if I feel I can connect, you know, then but I'll meet with you and maybe hear you out and see. And when we met actually here in Exeter at the Krabby Joe's, and I read her off of it, like just a pad of paper when I had the story.
Is that how you wrote on it? Like just a yellow legal pad or something?
Just a piece of paper. And I gave her to her, and I said, this is a story, and I could see her tearing up. Aww. You know, and I thought, okay, she likes it, you know, and she did. So that's where we went from. And then I left the technical and what medium and all that stuff to her, because I really don't know about art. Okay. The ideas, a lot of the ideas we kind of hash back and forth, you know, about I'd really like this picture to have this in it or that in it, or you know, whatever, and that kind of thing. And some of the other things she just did on her own, like the birds and whatever not, you know. Sure. Yeah, but we worked well together. Really well together.
That's important. Mm-hmm. And maybe for volume 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No.
People who have read this book now, are they giving you some reactions? Are you finding that it is actually achieving the purpose of helping families with that visiting process?
Well, I think so, because a lot of the people are really liking it, and they're saying, "Are you going to do another one?" And
Right.
also, when we did a test run in the back, when we went to Shakespeare and read it to some older children, that maybe
Right.
it wasn't kind of geared to them, but we wanted input.
Right.
And it achieved the purpose, even though one of their criticisms was they wanted more of a story. But that would be expected because they were older.
Right.
Then it really kind of wasn't geared to them. But you didn't want to say that, you know. But so
Right.
we understood where they were coming from. But it certainly got the dialogue going. They were talking and asking questions. They were really engaged. So yeah, I think it really did.
Really, that's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that is, as I read through the book, I mean, just randomly opened a page, you can see that there are a few words on every page, but that is something that is very simple for young children to follow and pick out words that they know. That seems pretty easy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the best way to get kids engaged in things.
Well, exactly, exactly. You don't want it to be overwhelming. You want them to be able to retain what they've been read, and then they also, and then you then, as I wanted the parent or whoever's reading the story,
Mm-hmm.
they can add their own story to it, and that was where I had to keep it vague enough so that they could do that. So basically, you got the point across that, you know, they were needing help, and that the nurses were there to help them. You know,
Right.
because you don't want them to be scared of the nurses. You
It's
know,
like the
that
friendly
sometimes they
police
see
officer.
exactly,
Friendly nurse.
exactly. You see the
Right.
uniform. You don't. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help. You know,
Right.
and yeah, and then just to add to whatever's going on in their life. So I was tempted to put more in, but you know, really, sometimes simple's better. You know,
Yeah, and let the family carry on the conversation based on their own circumstances.
exactly, because if I started adding more to it, every time I added more to it, it led to more.
Right.
And then it was like, well,
Right.
where do I stop? And it's not supposed to be a medical journal about whatever illness. You know, it's more, and I really said, just keep focusing. It's about the visit. What do I see when they visit? And this is what I see.
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds as though this is a book that long-term care facilities should have in their own libraries.
I think so. And I also think personally that in schools, like in their classrooms, it would open up a whole topic about aging and families and, you know, respect and not the roles that people play in an extended family and the
Right.
importance of that. Yeah.
Right. That's very challenging, the roles that people play, because the roles are changing then with people who are aging and moving into a circumstance where they need more care, and grandchildren are seeing their parents helping with
Exactly.
care that maybe is a little different and in some cases frightening.
Exactly. I was very fortunate. I grew up with my grandparents, very involved, and I saw, you know, always respect your elders, respect your elders,
Yes,
and I was around them. Um, so I just always feel that that's very important.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are you going to give us a sneak peek of what another book might be about that
Well,
involves your other two grandchildren?
well, I don't know. I've had a lot of people approach me, and one would be about death and dying. But
Ah,
I just don't know how to put children into that. It'll take a lot of thought to not make it frightening. So I really have to
right.
really think about how to do that.
That's a tough subject
It
because
really is.
oftentimes grandparents could be the first experience they have with death close to them, but it could also be a pet.
Oh, well, exactly. I had my youngest son passed, and
Oh, I'm
so that's
sorry.
why no that's why friends who know me say you should write about the experience your family had with Kevin, and it's very close to my heart, and I get it, but the emotion involved, it's not a light topic at all. You know, it's very in depth, and I just I feel that if I could do it right, it would help, really would help. But also, I'm scared of making a mistake. You know.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. For what it's worth, I know one of the things that we do here at the Oldish every year, just after Thanksgiving, is we put out a Christmas list for suggested purchases for grandparents, and they really don't need much.
No.
But the things that they do need are visits and maybe homemade cookies
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a new pair of slippers and
Exactly.
those kinds of things. So
Exactly.
it, I don't know, maybe a book about gifting from the heart.
Yeah, that's a
instead
great
of
idea.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where can people buy this book right now?
Well, right
And
now,
we'll put the link with this broadcast, by the way, to wherever she gives us.
yeah. Well, right now, if it's just at my email, and they would email me, and I could mail it out.
Mhm.
It's Anna Gaffney 1960 at gmail.com.
Okay, we'll put that
Yeah.
below this broadcast, and you'll be able to get in touch with Anna and buy your own copy. It might be a birthday coming up or Christmas. It might be a great book to put under the tree, but it is a great book if you've got somebody who is perhaps just heading into a different environment, long-term care, nursing care, a retirement village, anything like that, to help make the transition easier for the kids and for the parents
And
too,
for the
because it's a
parents.
discussion for them.
Exactly.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Anna.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
It's been really interesting. And to all of you, as I said at the top of the show, we will have the artist with us on next week's show. So you're going to get a full perspective on this wonderful book called Visiting Nannie. Until next week, then, please do take care of one another and remember that it does take a village to age a senior.